Hello, I'm Rabbi Chaitovsky. Welcome to another video dvar from my office here at BMH-BJ, Denver, Colorado. Our Torah portion this week is the Torah portion of Bishalach. The Israelites have just been released from Egypt, and it's about 6 or 7 days after they've left on that first Passover, their first Pesach, and they find themselves in a little area where in front of them is the Sea of Reeds, the Yam Suf, mistakenly called the Red Sea, but it's actually the Reed Sea. And they don't quite know what they're doing there. They know they're going to have to journey forward, and their situation is complicated because they turn around and they notice that behind them, coming towards them, is the entire Egyptian army. And some say the entire Egyptian nation, rallying behind Pharaoh, who himself is leading the charge. They reluctantly, they realize that they had let the slaves go, and now they want to get them back. Pharaoh's up to his old tricks. He's changed his mind again. And they're in hot pursuit of the Israelites. And between a rock and a hard place, Egyptians from behind them, the sea in front of them, they get scared, they don't know what to do, they feel that they are goners, and they lodge the first of many complaints to Moses that will characterize their journey in the desert. Is this why you brought us out of Egypt? To have us die outside the land of Egypt, right here in the desert? Like, you should have just left us there. And Moses says, no, watch what God will do. And we know the Midrash, Nachshon ben Aminadav, one of the Israelites, just plunges into the water up to his neck, and Israelites follow, and the water begins to split, and the Israelites cross on dry land, making it to the other side, and the waters come crashing down on their Egyptian pursuers, and we're told, Az Yashir Moshe, that Moses and the children of Israel began to sing, and they began to sing poetry, sing a song. Miriam and the women did the same thing, and it's just very fascinating that they celebrate their victory over the Egyptians, if you want to call it that, in song. And this coming Shabbat at our synagogue is indeed a Shabbat Shira, a Shabbat of song and music, and we invite everyone to come and join us at 9 a.m. for services with music and all sorts of celebration. In the aftermath of the celebration, I just wanted to turn our attention to one little verse, actually one little word, that seems very strange in the Torah portion. After we're told that Miriam pulled out her drum and the tambourine, and together with all the women celebrated with song and dance, we're told, Vayasa Moshe et Yisrael miyam suf. Now, the word vayasa comes from the word sa, which means to travel. And it is a strange form of the word. It means that Moses forced them to travel from the shores of the Reed Sea. Normally, and later on it does say this, it says vayisu, it says they traveled. They moved. They packed their bags and moved. Here it says Vayasa, which means Moses had to make them travel. And the question is, why did he have to make them travel? They knew where they were going. They had a destination in mind already, the Promised Land. It seems like they didn't want to leave the shores of the Reed Sea. And the question is, why? Why didn't they want to leave? And there's two explanations that are given. I always look at these explanations. One is sort of positive, and one is a little bit more negative. I'm going to start with the negative one first, because it says a lot about the mindset of a recently freed slave people who had been subjected to horrors over the past 2 centuries. It says that when the Egyptians decided to pursue the Israelites, they were so confident in their victory that they got dressed up in their battle finery. They got dressed up with all their medals and all of their gold, and they took their fancy show chariots. They didn't take the chariots that were like designed for for roughing it, that they didn't take the SUV kind of chariot, the all-terrain chariot with the four-wheel drive. They took their fancy chariot because they thought this is going to be a piece of cake, and the Israelites are going to be goners, and they'll be back in Egypt, and we're going to celebrate, and we'll be dressed for the celebration already. Well, it didn't work out that way. The Egyptians were drowned in the sea, and after that happened, the Medrash tells us that all of their gold, all the finery, rose to the top of the waters and were floating there. And the Israelites, who left Egypt with much of the money and the gold and the jewelry that Egyptians willingly parted with, that's what we're told last week, they went and they grabbed. They wanted more of that material wealth. They wanted to hold on to what they would consider to be the symbol of their victory over the Egyptians. And they became very greedy. And they didn't want to move because they just wanted to hoard all of this material wealth. It's like winning the $1.5 billion lottery. You want to get it all. And Moses had to convince them it's not a good attitude to have. Your quest for material things, not the best attitude. So it says, Vayasa Moshe. Moses had to drag them away from that heap of sudden wealth, because we know the pitfalls of sudden wealth. But there's another explanation that I like even better. It comes from the Zohar. And the Zohar tells us that the Israelites were reluctant to leave because they had witnessed God's protection and God's love for them. And they could not imagine another location, another experience that would be anything like this at all. They recognized God's hand in what happened. It says, Vayaminu b'Hashem Moshe Avdo. They believed in God and they believed in Moses, God's servant. They recognized that the hand of God is guiding them the entire way, and they didn't want to leave that place for a good reason. They thought, we'll never get closer to God. And very admirably, Moses tells them, that's great. But there's another experience coming up that's going to be even closer. You will feel even closer to God. God will reveal God's own self from a mountain. And you're not going to believe what you're going to experience. You're going to experience God's revelation in God's own words. Those words, of course, the Ten Commandments. The revelation, of course, standing at the foot of Mount Sinai. The Israelites needed to be convinced, and they couldn't believe that there'd be something greater than this as far as God's nearness and closeness to them. So this is a positive thing that they saw. They recognized what God had done for them, and they had yet to learn that God was going to do even more for them, even as God would ask them what they could do for him. Shabbat Shalom. And we'll see you in Shul, 9 o'clock, Shabbat Shira. Come and join the song.